Hello and welcome to Car and Bike. The Royal Enfield Scram 440 is here. Looks more or less similar to the Scram 411, but it gets new colors, but more importantly, it gets a bigger 443cc engine with more performance, and of course now it gets a 6-speed gearbox, switchable ABS and other changes. We'll tell you all about it, how is the bike to ride, what has improved, what could have been better. But before that, please do consider liking the Car and Bike channel, subscribe to it so that you get notified every time we ride a new bike or drive a new car. And if you like this review informative, do consider sharing it with your friends who may be interested in the Scram 440. So now let's take a close look at the Royal Enfield Scram 440. As you can see, the design wise, dimensions wise, proportion wise, not much has changed from the Scram 411, but there are important changes. For starters, this is all new. It's an LED headlight. Now it gets on the Scram 440, and of course new colors, and more importantly it gets alloy wheels with tubeless tires on the top spec Force variant that we are riding today. Now the Force variant is available in 3 colors: Force Blue, Force Grey and Force Steel. You also get spoked wheels with tube type tires in the Trail variant, which is also available in 2 colors: Trail Blue and Trail Green. So it gets the LED headlight in both the variants, and for the first time it gets a switch here, with the press of which you can switch off the rear ABS for off-road use. And of course you get the same old instrument console. Tripper pod is not standard, that's optional, so you have to buy it extra and fit it, which will give you turn-by-turn navigation. And you also get a charging port here, a USB charging port, and of course this gets a LED headlight, but the throw of the headlight is just okay. It's not great, but it's not too bad either, it's just okay. Personally, I prefer the halogen throw better, so that LED light, you check it out yourself whether that's enough for you or not. It's just okay, it's not great. And so that's about it in terms of features. Of course, this instrument console, you get a fuel level indicator, odometer, trip meters and a gear position indicator and a clock. So that's about it in terms of features. Now, Royal Enfield says it is a ADV crossover, not really an adventure bike, a crossover kind of bike. Think of something like a subcompact SUV where you can do soft roading, so to speak. And that's the premise of the Scram 440 as well. But from experience with the Scram 411, that could do a fair bit of off-roading. This one also can do a fair bit of off-roading. We'll tell you about it, ride it in a minute, but I'll tell you about the suspension travel. It gets 190 mm suspension travel up front, 180 mm suspension travel at the rear, and it gets 200 mm ground clearance. So it is ready for some off-road use. And the rear subframe has been strengthened, so you can install a top box here if you want to, and it got a payload capacity of about 10 kg. So it's a reinforced subframe at the rear for load carrying capacity. That's how it looks. This is the Force Blue again. What do you think about the design? What do you think about the colors? Do let us know in the comments. But time to ride the bike. But before that, let me just fire it up and make you listen to what the new 443cc engine sounds like. Oh, talking about the engine, it's the same long stroke engine, but it's been bored out 3 mm bigger bore than the 411, the LS 411 of the Scram 411. And Royal Enfield says NVH levels on this engine has been improved, so it's supposed to be more refined, and now it gets a 6-speed gearbox. For now, let's start it up and make you listen to what the exhaust note sounds like, shall we? Nice pops and crackles, so I think it sounds quite good. What are your thoughts about the exhaust note of the Scram 440? Do let us know in the comments.
As soon as you set off, the refinement of the LS 440 is immediately apparent. In numbers, the LS 440 is marginally more powerful, but it feels more relaxed and calm, particularly at higher gears. High-speed cruising is effortless, with the engine spinning lower in 6th gear and with better top-end performance than before. And on a twisty road, the Scram 440 has predictable dynamics. It's not sharp, but it has decent handling around corners. The brakes have been improved too with bigger pistons and offer better stopping power than before.
I think the most impressive bit about the new Scram 440 is that 443cc engine, the LS440 as it's called. It's a lot more improved, lot more refined than the LS411 of the Scram 411, and fueling is spot on. When you open the gas, there's no surprises, there's no jerky movements on the fueling or in the throttle response. So whether you're riding on a small road or you're on the highway, that refinement really comes across in a really impressive manner. And now it gets a 6th gear also, which acts like an overdrive. So 5th gear you can accelerate up to 80, 85, 90 kilometers per hour, and cruising speed has also improved. You can sit at 100, 120 all day long, no problems whatsoever. So this one, the 440 Scram, has got bigger lungs. That 3 mm bore improvement, and of course the NVH levels improvement has made it a significantly improved version of the Scram that we have seen earlier. Now, like I said, the gearbox, the 6-speed gearbox, the 6 cogs really helps when you're riding long distance on the highway, and it makes the Scram 440 feel effortless cruising at triple-digit speed. But I feel that the gear shifting, although it's precise, it slots into place, all the gears slot into place quite nicely. The shifting mechanism could have been more refined. Maybe I've had bigger expectations from the gearbox, but I felt it's a little clunky. No misses, no false neutrals, but it could have been more refined, the shifting mechanism. The clutch is not very hard. Of course, it's not as soft and supple as the Himalayan 450. Comparisons will invariably be drawn, but it's not so hard that it will give your hand a workout, so no complaints there as well. So overall, great bike, but I have 2 small niggles which I think are worth mentioning. One is a clunky gearbox, and of course at high speeds when you're taking corners, there's a slight weave. It's not something which is unsettling or throw you off balance, but there's a weave which was there in the earlier Scram 411 as well. It is still there in the Scram 440. So unless you're going hell-bent for leather, that shouldn't be a spot of bother. So overall, in terms of refinement, in terms of high-speed cruising ability, I think the Scram 440 has really made a nice case for itself, and off-road riding, daily riding, it can do a little bit of everything. So in terms of versatility, that engine with a 6-speed gearbox and overall as a motorcycle, the Scram 440 really stands on its own as an alternative to somebody who may not want a bulky, big adventure bike like the Himalayan.
When you do decide to go off-road, the Scram 440 manages to chug along over all kinds of surfaces. But its weight isn't particularly suited for taking on jumps and the like, but it will comfortably go over almost everything you introduce it to.
And if you don't want to do hardcore off-road riding, this one can do a fair bit of off-road riding. In fact, it is one of my favorite scrambler style motorcycles, so to speak, or adventure crossover as Royal Enfield says. So quite impressive really, and it holds its own in terms of the price bracket, in terms of the positioning in that segment of motorcycles. And I think for anyone looking for this kind of a bike, which is your roadster, which can do little bit of off-roading as well, the Scram 440 has hit that sweet spot. It's not very intimidating like the Himalayan 450. It's not a very big bike, and when you look at the saddle height, that's 795 mm seat height, it makes it very accessible. So the seat height and the girth of the bike, it's not very big, it's very accessible. So for anyone looking to get into motorcycling, even as a first bike, the Scram 440 really makes for a good case, and it can be an all-rounder. You can commute on it, you can do long distance riding on it if you want to, and it can do a fair bit of off-road riding as well. Suspension, of course, is not as great as the Himalayan. The Himalayan gets Showa upside down forks, 43 mm forks, Showa monocoque. This one gets telescopic 41 mm forks, and travel is also less than the Himalayan. So it is not as plush as the Himalayan, but as you can see where you're riding it today, it is not incapable at all. It can do a fair bit of off-road riding. So yeah, you want a roadster, you want a long distance tourer, you want to do a little bit of off-road riding, this bike can do it all without a whimper.
With all the updates, the Scram 440 gets a minor price revision, with ex-showroom prices starting at 2,08,000 rupees and going up to 2,15,000 rupees. The Scram always had its own fan following, and with the updates, the new Scram 440 should keep it relevant, at least for a few years more.
So then, how is the Scram 440? In one word, it's really a good bike. It's a much improved version of the Scram 411 with a bigger engine, 6-speed gearbox now. And who is this bike for? If you don't want a big bulky adventure bike like the Himalayan 450, if you want a roadster, which you want to do everything which you want to do possibly with a motorcycle, this will do it all. You can commute on it, you can go touring on it, and you can do a fair bit of off-road riding as well. And to top it off, even with the alloy wheel tubeless tire version, it's still 70,000-75,000 rupees less than the Himalayan 450, and it's accessible with a low seat height. And although the weight is not much of a difference, still a heavy bike at 198 kg. But if you want a first bike, or if you're upgrading from a smaller bike, the Scram 440, take a test ride. It actually is a nice bike which can do everything for it. Don't expect the performance of the Himalayan 450 or the suspension or the brakes. Brakes aren't that bad, but yeah, it is not as good as the Himalayan 450. But overall, if you think about those things, the brakes not as good as the Himalayan 450, suspension not as great, but it does the job properly. And heavy, yes, but you don't want a big, tall adventure bike. You want a roadster which you can commute on, you can go long distance riding on, you can do or start off-road riding on. This will do it all. So all you need to do is take a test ride. The Scram 440 could be the bike for you.